Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu-Ewart. It's Tuesday, March 14th. This is Africa 54. Cyclone Freddy packs powerful winds and torrential rains, killing more than 100 people in Malawi and Mozambique on its return to southern Africa's mainland. In our health report, at least 200 million women and girls around the world live with the results of harmful practice of female genital mutilation. Kenya's Judy Gitau talks about her advocacy work to protect women and girls. And Uganda's City Oilers finally qualified to play at the 2023 BAL Games after two failed attempts in 2021 and 2022. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin in southern Africa, where in the wake of Cyclone Freddie, heavy rains are hampering rescue efforts in Malawi. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Cyclone Freddy, carrying powerful winds and torrential rains, killed more than 100 people in Malawi and Mozambique on its return to southern Africa's mainland. Freddy, on track to become the longest-lasting storm on record, barred through southern Africa over the weekend for the second time within a few weeks, making a comeback after a first hit in late February. Malawi bore the brunt of the damage after mudslides overnight washed away many houses.
We are conveying the dead bodies whenever we have found them to Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital mortuary, of which is currently now full. But still more, we'll still be going there with the dead bodies that will be still coming.
Another 134 people were injured and at least 16 are missing. Many residents have used their bare hands to dig through the mud, hoping to find survivors. One resident who refused to give his name and was covered in mud said the government rescuers were late to arrive to help the people. The United Nations says more than 11,000 people are affected by the storm. The impact of the cyclone has piled more woes on a country grappling with the deadliest cholera outbreak in its history, which has killed nearly 1,800 people since last year. President Lazarus Chakwera declared a state of disaster in the southern region of the nation. Malawi has ordered schools in 10 southern districts to remain closed until at least Wednesday, with rains and winds expected to keep battering the nation's south. The country's energy utility warns that electricity generation will be unstable due to a temporary shutdown of the hydropower plant stations to prevent muddy waters from damaging the turbines. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
For more on Cyclone Freddie, I'm joined by Lucy Mtilatila, Director of the Malawi Meteorological Department. Lucy, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
Update us first on the current weather conditions in Malawi.
Yeah, I think currently now we are seeing that the tropical cyclone Freddie has weakened, and it's now just a mere low pressure area. But however, it is still bringing torrential rains in southern Malawi. So we are still experiencing rainfall like today, and we are expecting them again tomorrow. It's only maybe after tomorrow where we are seeing a significant reduction from the effects of this tropical cyclone Freddie.
We had our reporter there do a roundup of what's happening in Mozambique and Malawi. Can you describe to us what the impact of Cyclone Freddie has been like in Malawi?
Oh yes, it's really a very sad situation here in Malawi, especially in Blantyre, because of the landslides that have taken place. So far from this evening, the death toll has risen to 190, and also about 36 people missing. and over 300 people who are injured. So it's really a pathetic situation. And also this landslide has also happened in another neighboring district, also Chiladzulu. However, we have also some cases of flooding in about 8 districts right now, where there is a lot of people who have been displaced. Actually, we've noted that this tropical cyclone has brought a lot of rainfall, more than 400 millimeters in 24 hours only. This is the amount of rainfall that can be maybe accumulated in 2 months, but only coming in just 24 hours. So that's the situation right now. Yeah.
Lucy, briefly tell us what you're predicting the weather will be like in the next couple of days.
We are expecting now the situation to be better on Thursday. That's when we are expecting significant reduction in rainfall. Otherwise, on Wednesday, we are still expecting some rainfall over the country. Actually, this rainfall is also disturbing the rescue operations on the ground, especially when some people who are missing, they are believed that probably they are covered in mud, and now the situation, it's really difficult to get them. Of course, some of the areas are also difficult to reach because of the terrain nature of these areas. That's another problem that is there. It's until when it's dry, when now maybe vehicles can gain access to those remote areas.
Lucy, thank you so much for your perspective and insight into this. Lucy Mtilatila is the director of the Malawi Meteorological Department. United Nations Children's Fund says 11 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa are experiencing a cholera outbreak. UNICEF is appealing for $150 million to assist countries in the region and says over 67,000 cases and nearly 1,800 deaths have occurred, with Malawi and Mozambique bearing the heaviest burden. VOA's Tatenda Gumbo spoke to Dr. Paul Ngwankum, UNICEF Regional Health Advisor for Eastern and Southern Africa, about the situation.
In Southern Africa, you're having Malawi, which has the most important number of cases, but there are 4 other countries. And if you go to the Horn of Africa, where we are having other complications due to drought, you have Somalia, you have Kenya, you have Ethiopia. And these are complex situations because, in parts of Ethiopia, there is insecurity, and almost in all of Somalia, there is insecurity. If you go to the Great Lakes, we're having cases in Burundi, we're having cases in Tanzania, and just a few days ago, we're having cases in another highly insecure country called South Sudan. So I think these are the situation we are having now. And I think if we don't intervene rapidly, we may have to come to a more serious situation.
And this appeal that you have, what exactly will it be used for to support these communities? I know, of course, there are multiple different factors depending on where you are, but what will it be used for?
Well, but cholera is a disease which is due to infection because of consumption of either water that is contaminated or food that is contaminated. And these regions we are talking of are already going through drought. They are already going through a situation of very bad wash situations. Water and sanitation is bad, so we have to be able to provide water for these communities. In addition to that, you have to ensure that the communities are engaged, they participate, and there is what we call social behavior change, risk communication, and community engagement to get them engaged. So those are the 2 big components. But outside that, we have to support case management as well, making sure that the people who unfortunately get infected by cholera have access to the treatment centers. And in the treatment centers, we have to provide supplies, which basically are infection prevention and control supplies and treatment supplies to be able to take care of these patients and ensure that you have human resources that are not only competent, trained, but they're also motivated to be able to take care of this.
You spoke of the statement itself, and you mentioned extreme weather patterns. Of course, we're seeing the drought in East Africa. We're also seeing Cyclone Freddie, which has made a return, an unprecedented, rare return, now has hit Madagascar, is on its way to Mozambique. Can you talk about that and how, these extreme weather patterns are really affecting your work in handling diseases such as cholera?
I think you're very right. Climate change is a challenge, big challenge. Either we have problems of access to water, no water, drought, like the case of the Horn of Africa, which has its own consequences, or we have too much water, which are the situations brought about by the cyclones and the floods that not only unearth all the disease and other things that are going to contaminate the water that people are consuming, but also destroy homes and keep these people out of their normal habitat and exposing them to bigger risks because they don't have access to the sanitation that they have to be able to prevent themselves from infection, not only of cholera, but other diarrhea diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Gwakum, UNICEF Regional Health Advisor for Eastern and Southern Africa, speaking to VOA's Tatenda Gumbo. Sub-Saharan African migrants in Tunisia are struggling to find homes for return to their home countries since February. The crackdown that was ordered by President Kais Saied, the move seen as a racist move by many, has angered the international community. For more on the status of migrants in Tunisia, I'm joined by Monji Dawadi, President of Tunisian United Network. Mr. Monji, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Monji, you have your network spread across here and Tunisia. What's the current status of the Black African migrants in Tunisia?
Well, the recent reports that we have received from the ground is that there are still few hundred migrants are held into some of these centers by the government. They're not being processed. They're held in very difficult conditions, as well as other migrants who are trying to stay away from the attacks that we've seen the last weeks. Some of them are staying under tents and under bridges, trying to avoid any contact with the public, where they can perceive that some attacks might happen to them, and this is very understandable after these racist rhetoric coming from the president of the country that spread and fear among many of the migrant communities. And we've seen, these fears were justified because we've seen some attacks on these migrants. Some of them were kicked out of their homes, beaten. Mm-hmm. They were subjected to very horrible things. So those are the latest that we've seen from Tunisia.
And what's the impact right now? As you know, when we heard President of the World Bank say the World Bank is pausing its future engagements with Tunisia, what are the implications so far?
Well, there was a lot of concern from Tunisia, and rightfully so. I think the World Bank, when they issued their statement, they were expressing concern in general about these statements coming from the president of Tunisia, and also concerns about some of their own employees. We have a lot of employees that work at the World Bank from many of sub-Saharan countries, and some of them were concerned about their safety. And so for that matter, the World Bank wanted to send a message to the government of Tunisia that these are serious issues, that the president should not be engaged in such racist rhetoric. And so they paused all future talks about strategic or future loans to Tunisia. And I think that also had effect on how the IMF is going to proceed. As you remember, last time I spoke about Tunisia asking for $1.9 billion loan from the IMF. Now that loan is in jeopardy. At least the talks about that loan is in jeopardy for the time being. And those are very, very serious consequences for Tunisia.
Monji, we're running out of time. I wanted to see what your network is doing, but we'll get you back again to tell us how you're keeping this momentum going. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Monji Dawadi is president of the Tunisian United Network. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to land in Ethiopia Tuesday as he visits the East African nation and Niger as the Biden administration accelerates a push to engage with Africa to counter China's growing influence on the continent. Blinken is visiting Addis Ababa and Niamey to discuss the peace deal that ended hostilities in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region and counter-terrorism efforts aimed at Islamic extremists in Niger and the Sahel. Blinken's trip will be the third high-profile visit to Africa this year by top members of the Biden administration. Still to come, Zimbabwean women laud amendment to marriage law. Stay with us.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll discuss this week's visit to Ethiopia and Niger by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Later this month, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris tours Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia. We'll also discuss why migrants are fleeing Tunisia after controversial comments by President Kais Saied. Join me, Hayley Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, Nigeria's central bank says it will allow old Naira notes to continue as legal tender until the end of the year to comply with the March 3rd court order. The move raises hopes that this will ease acute cash shortages in the economy. 6 mobile vaccine production units by German pharma company BioNTech have arrived in Kigali, Rwanda, the first such shipments to Africa as the continent seeks to boost mRNA vaccine manufacturing. And Kenya's Energy Ministry says it has signed deals with UAE's ADNOC and Saudi Aramco for the supply of petroleum product with a 6-month credit period, the move designed to curb demand for dollars that is weakening the local currency. Women activists and women groups in Zimbabwe are lauding an amendment to the country's marriage law, which they say has improved on division of property in light of a divorce. Under the new marriage law of 2022 Act, girlfriends get inheritance rights, and there's a demand for bride price back when the couple separates. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us utilize...
Last year, Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa signed into law the new Marriage Act, bringing much happiness to women activists. Has it made life easier for women? I put that question to Geraldine Kabaya, a divorce lawyer in Zimbabwe.
Certainly it has, because it has, in place of being very restrictive, it has opened up the space for what we call a civil partnership, which is essentially what we loosely termed cohabitation in the past, in previous law. So it has introduced use of the Matrimonial Causes Act, parts of it, to assist the court in coming up with equitable distribution, especially of property when spouses dissolve their marriage.
In the past, some Zimbabwean women have lost their property in divorce to the husband, causing anguish among women and condemnation from activists. The legal rights group Women and Law in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, says the new law still has some gaps that needs improvement, just like another law.
But however, it's not all negative. The New Marriages Act came up with aligned with the Constitution in terms of coming up with the age of marriage. It's now 18, in a bid to curb child marriages. And also it criminalizes child marriages, which is a progressive development.
Child marriages were common among religious groups before the law came into being. Now that is solved. Divorce lawyer Kabaya says it is something outstanding.
The law also speaks to protection of the interests of a spouse who is civilly married from the dissolution of a civil partnership. So essentially, the court is left with a wide discretion to choose whatever it wants to apply, whatever it wants to consider when dissolving a civil partnership, when one of the partners is also married civilly to another person. So that in itself has problems because there are no rules.
Women activists say That gives it too much leeway to the presiding judge, which may result in the woman losing in a divorce case. But they are happy with some positive changes in the new Marriage Act of Zimbabwe. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The United Nations Children's Fund says at least 200 million women and girls worldwide are living with the results of harmful practice of female genital mutilation. VOA Health reporter Mkamiti Kibayasi has more.
Hello, Esther.
Mkamiti.
Nice to see you again.
All right.
All right. Female genital mutilations is mostly carried out on young girls between infancy and adolescence and occasionally on adult women. 3 million girls in Africa are at risk of undergoing FGM every year. It has serious implications for the physical, psychological, sexual and reproductive health of females. I spoke with Judy Gitau in Kenya. She is Regional Coordinator of Equality Now, a non-governmental organization to advocate for the protection and promotion of human rights of women and girls. She explains the FGM situation in Africa.
The situation with FGM, if I may start with Africa, is on the legal position. There are at least 4 countries that have a high prevalence of FGM that still do not have a legal framework in place, which means FGM in those countries is going on without any form of accountability. On the positive, however, other countries that have FGM have at least a law in place. And this means even though the numbers or the prevalence is still fairly high, there's still an opportunity for accountability. With regards to Kenya specifically, some good news. The recent data health survey have indicated that the numbers have gone down from 21% to 15% this year. But there's still high prevalence in some practicing community. I would say the efforts haven't been homogeneous. It depends from country to country. At the African Union level, we do have the Salima Initiative, which again seeks to accelerate the different efforts that, one, get a legal framework in place for all the countries that actually have a high prevalence rate of FGM within them, so that at least there's a basis or the policy to start from. And then the responsibility lies on each of the countries, on each of the governments to begin to push to implement the laws, but also to sensitize the communities in acknowledging that FGM is a social problem, a social norm, and therefore a need, again, to get the communities to understand in order to abandon this practice. But we also have to acknowledge in certain countries there's been a pullback. There's indeed both physical and psychological effects ranging from trauma to depression to anxiety, and we support them, including with our partners with psychosocial support, provide counseling, trauma counseling, in order for the victims to be able to accept the situation and then seek physical help if that is available. What is important, however, is that we ensure that we don't just have it in law, but we win hearts and minds, that everybody in the community begins to understand that this is a practice that results in harm.
UNICEF is aiming for the elimination of female genital mutilation by 2030. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Kamiti. Be sure to watch Africa 54's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. Uganda's City Oilers qualified to play at the 2023 Basketball Africa League after 2 failed attempts in 2021 and 2022. Reporter John Sentamu has more.
The City Oilers Basketball Club has been playing at the grand stage since its establishment 12 years ago, competing at such championship games as FIBA and the National Basketball League, where it's locked in 8 consecutive National Basketball League championships since 2014. However, where it comes to big competition, none on the African continent beats the Basketball Africa League BAL Championship, where the team will make its debut next month. City Oilers veteran players like Tony Drileba and team captain James Okello acknowledge that playing at the BAL is a dream come true.
It's been a long wait for us. The first time around, we fell short in 2019. It was very heartbreaking, and it took us a much longer time because of COVID to be able to get back to this point, you know, and now to even just think about the games coming up, and you know, we're part of the best 12 teams in Africa. It's a very unbelievable feeling.
The team attributes its high-level play that helped it secure a BAL regular season slot last November in South Africa to adding new players like Fayed Bale, Titus Luwal and Jermaine Roybrook Jr. to the established stars like Jimmy Enabu and Ben Komakech.
With the way that recruitment has been done is based on what we need as a team, depth, experience. Some of the new players can really play. I think the management has made the necessary adjustments to the team.
A total of 12 African teams will compete in the 2023 BAL regular season. The qualified teams are split into 2 groups of 6, with the top 4 from the Sahara Conference starting in March and the Nile Conference starting in April, qualifying for the quarterfinals in May in Rwanda for the championship. Uganda's City Oilers is in the Nile Conference to be held in Egypt next month. City Oilers coach Mande Juruni is unfazed by the team's competitors.
We want to continue building chemistry in the team that we had. Obviously, there are some weaknesses that we saw in South Africa that we need to correct, and because of that, you know, we might add in 1 or 2 players to reinforce the team. We have the experience, and so we're up for it. We know what's ahead of us. We know what we need to do for us to be able to compete.
Let's go Oilers! Let's go! Let's go Oilers! Let's...
As the team prepares for its BAL debut next month, in Uganda, fans are expectant of a victory from their favorite team.
My favorite coach, of course, that's Coach Mande Juruni. Then my favorite player for the next ongoing BAL, we have Titus Raul. He's just joined us. Very good shooter, very good in the paint. Then, of course, expectations for the BAL, it's our debut. We expect to, of course, not to be there for numbers. We want to go out there and compete, give out the results, and of course, we will be representing our country, Uganda.
The BAL Championship regular season starts with the Sahara Conference in Dakar, Senegal on March 11th, with reigning champions, a US Monastir of Tunisia, Senegalese outfit AS Douanes, Rwanda's Energy Group, Nigeria's Kwara Falcons, Abidjan Basketball Club Fighters of Ivory Coast, and Stade Malien from Mali. Reporting for VOA, this is John Sentamo from Kampala, Uganda.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.